Wow, you're all still here. I'm impressed. Almost there. And good luck for you when you do yours in a moment. I think this is quite an interesting thing that I get to do, and Joe's given me quite a nice segue and perhaps permission to be Miss Marple for the rest of my 20 minutes, in as much as he spoke about the mysteries and the curiosities that might arise through a project. And my impact on this has been to actually look at reviewing some of the projects. So I actually have had the opportunity to do that element of evaluation and review. A little bit about me. I'm doing a part-time PhD, and my interest is in digital heritage, digital media and how we can use it in heritage sites to increase engagement. So quite a lot of the projects today have been very interested in along those lines. So the projects that I was looking at for the Digital Heritage Project was 11 projects that all focused on the creation of digital products to show various numbers of different sites, and particularly to use things like computer animation, 3D printing, 3D modelling, and mobile geolocation. Like a lot of the projects, these were jointly funded by the AHRC and the Heritage Lottery Fund with the All Our Stories programmes. So the idea here was to observe, analyse, to interpret the historic buildings and the people and the artefacts associated with them. And to quote the website for the actual Digital Building Heritage blog, the idea was to create a new energy and shape to these iconic buildings so that they could once again play an important part in their communities. So I thought I would just spend a few moments showing you the output from all of these projects. So 9 of the projects resulted in a 3D visualisation. These 4 here are 3D reconstructions, and they are varying types of buildings. So we have a workhouse that has some audio content. We have a farm, a court farm in Pembury. We have a reconstruction of a women's hospital, and here we have the Tixel window, a Tudor Bay window. And in some cases, these buildings don't exist anymore. What we also have are some additional types of reconstructions, and these are more like the fly-through that you saw this morning when Stefan actually took us through and showed us these buildings. And so with both of these animations, you actually fly around these buildings. So this is Dyesworth Heritage Trust and their church at Dyesworth, and this is Pembroke Dock, and this is quite an extensive animation. If you get a chance to go and have a look at that, that is very beautiful with lots of things happening there. Dyesworth also had another project done for them, or another element done for them, which was an opportunity for their church to be presented through a period of time. So there are several images of this church, and you see it grow throughout the centuries. And you also have the Wigston Frame Knitters Museum that again shows the building through a period of time. Now, we're not allowed to have favourites, as somebody said earlier on. I think these are my favourites. What we have here, I do quite like these. What we have here, this particular project, they recreated a building which is still there and you can still see it, but you have no idea what it is now because it's just an empty shell. And it's actually the tram depot. That's still there. But what they've also created for them is a rather lovely animation which shows a tram. Unfortunately, you can't see the road or anything like that, but it's ostensibly travelling up the road from Leicester Station to the tramway depot, and then it pulls in, and you can see it in a bit more context. And what we have here is Swannington Heritage Trust, and they've got a reconstruction of their incline. And again, we have an animation, we have an audio, and very excitingly, the roof flies off this building, and then you can see inside, and you can see some of the recreation of stuff actually going on in there. 2 other projects were undertaken with very different outputs. So what we have here are 2 mobile apps constructed using the same underpinning technology and the same underpinning coding, but we have one of the Welford Road Cemetery, so you can actually go and look at a number of people within that cemetery. And we also have the Wolverhampton Civic and Historic Society, and this is an app that shows you the blue plaques. So what they've had the opportunity to do with that is put in more data, more stories, more interpretation. It's also geolocated, so that you do have the capacity to stand beside a grave and go, which one's this? And actually have a look at it, and the same with the blue plaques. So those are the actual projects that we looked at. Let's have a look now at the actual starting points really. And I think before I talk about this particular starting point, in order to put some context on the way these projects operated, I wanted to just give a little bit of context to the funding, and we've already heard how these projects were funded from other groups this morning. For these particular projects, the community partners got their money first, and then sort of came and spoke to the university, and the university then had to negotiate with which projects they were able to support, and then they had to go and get their funding. And there was a very short amount of time for them to do that, and I think you'll see that may have had some impact on it as we go through. So with all evaluation, we want to really start with, well, what did you want to achieve in the first place? And this is a flip chart from one of the workshops that I actually attended. And we spoke to the partners and said, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? And not surprisingly, the sorts of things they actually wanted to move forward with in nearly all the projects was they wanted to promote their heritage site. They wanted a way for the rest of the world to see what they actually did. And they wanted to reach out to what they were calling the wider world. They wanted to raise the awareness of their heritage site, and what I thought was most interesting, they wanted to excite people, particularly those who found it boring, which I thought was perhaps a bit of a tall order, but that's what they wanted to do. And the attraction for them of the digital resource was the fact that this, they felt, could give them access to a much, much wider audience. So I think it's important we have those in mind when we think about the actual evaluation. So I was lucky enough to be asked to go and actually do an evaluation of these 11 projects as part of the Micro Legacy project. And so I thought it would be best to focus on the questions that we've got here, which I will go through in a moment. I won't talk about them in detail now because I'm going to go through them. So what did I actually do? I did some semi-structured interviews, I spoke to the DMU team, I spoke to people that were involved in the design side, I spoke to the PI. I spoke to, and tried to speak to, the heritage partners, and I would say with varying success, to be fair. So some of them I was able to talk to very easily. I sent out a survey, didn't get a huge number of replies. Given that I had 11 projects, I did have 3 replies, so I suppose it's not a bad number, but equally it's not a great number. And I am aware that there are some stories out there that I've not heard yet, and I would very much like to go and hear those stories. So I was able to go and meet and talk to a couple of the heritage sites, which was very interesting. I also had a look at their websites, and I also had a look at their analytics to see, because all of this is on YouTube, and obviously you can look at you can look at the analytics for the mobile apps as well. So I thought, I'll have a look at those and some of the usage. So if I just take you through these questions then, what difference does the Heritage Project make? Now this is not my interpretation, this is me looking at the data that has actually been sent to me through the various ways in which I've collected it. So both sides said, well, we do have better interpretation of our data, we've got visualisation of our data. We can show people things that you can't see anymore. We can show them the incline, we can show them stuff moving around, which was great. We have been able to promote our site. We have done some promotion. Some of these people had launches of their projects. I think perhaps the best example of this was one of these projects has actually even been seen by the Queen, I was told. So I think they might get the award there. They've also got one thing that was really interesting from the heritage partners. They said it really increased their confidence. And we spoke about that earlier on, I think, about how they just felt a little bit bigger. And I thought that was really interesting. But also their ambition to do more, particularly with digital technology. So from the point of view of looking at the value of collaborative heritage research, for the universities, they were really excited to work on real projects with real people in a real life situation, away from theory and into the practice. And whether that was actually to do with technology or actually doing practical project management, both of them felt to be of great value. For the heritage partner, they developed some very interesting skills in research that they didn't have before. Some of it was very new skills, some of it was honing skills that they did have. The access to leading edge technology, the laser stuff, and they'd never done things like that before, so that was great. Another very interesting side product was the focus that they gave them, because what they discovered so for example, if you're going to create an app and you're going to have lots of people in your cemetery, and you've got thousands of people in your cemetery, how do you choose which ones you actually want to tell stories about? How do you choose which ones to include? Because you can't do them all. So it really made them focus on the stories they wanted to tell and the way that they wanted to present their data. So I think from that point of view, there were some very interesting things there. And then the impacts of collaborative heritage in research and creating digital heritage resources. I found this question a little harder to answer, and maybe I need to wait for those answers to come through actually. But again, we're talking here about the increased confidence and professionalism for heritage partners. And for the university partners, what they found was they actually got some resources that perhaps they weren't expecting. They were able to create more student projects. So there was impact there for the teaching and learning back at the university as well. There were things they could give their students to do. So those are the questions I focused on, but then there was other stuff that tumbled out of this. And I thought, well, there's a whole lot of stuff here that really is about lessons learned as well. And there was some interesting stuff on project management that arose. I think for these projects, and particularly the digital reconstructions, what happened there was the university team quite quickly developed a sort of project method for the way that they would, the project flow, for how they would actually deal with what they were working with. And so they really did the project management, and I think on all these projects, the project management was very much done on the university side. I think there were some interesting issues about communication on sort of both sides really, in as much as you've got cultures and working practices that don't always necessarily sit together, and you've also got some cultures there whereby the iterative process of a project, when something has to go back to a governing body, in either case, that body may not sit for another couple of weeks, and then to get them back together again, and for that to happen within the short window that these people had to do these projects, I think that caused quite a few sort of little difficulties. I did also pick up differences in what the partner, both sides of the partnership expected to. Time was a big issue, and both partners, both heritage partners and the university partners, really felt that they basically had 1 month for each project. And that was enough to produce the thing. It wasn't enough to do the niceties on either side. It wasn't enough to do the evaluation. It wasn't enough to do proper testing. So a lot of this stuff is out there, but it has sort of stopped. And there is a sort of case of, well, it needs a bit more testing, it needs a bit more promotion, it needs some more stuff to go on with it. In terms of expectations, I think this is a very interesting one. And I did detect, talking to the heritage partners, the way that they got to work with the university wasn't necessarily what they always expected, and they sort of had this feeling they were going to get this dedicated person or dedicated time, and they did get dedicated time, but not necessarily in the way that they were expecting it, because obviously our university partners were off doing other things as well, so there was a little bit of a disconnect there. There was not a complaint about that, they just said, oh, that was a bit different to what we're expecting. And there were also differences in expectations regarding what the technology could achieve. And again, I think I'm going to go back to the fact that the funding decisions were made so quickly that I think the scoping activity was foreshortened. And I think because of that, it made it very difficult for both sides to really be very certain at the beginning of the project what was technically possible. So for example, the Welford Cemetery really wanted a digital reconstruction of the building that used to be there. Now that one actually sorted out quite quickly because they were pretty soon told, well, you don't have proper plans, you might have photographs, but we need plans. But again, it was something that there wasn't much time to really work through that. So they ended up with an app, which was absolutely fine. The evaluation and testing, as I've already alluded to, was very, very limited. There was technical testing to make sure things worked, but there has not been much testing. There has not been much user testing. And I'm going to link this up to product usage and sustainability, because I have a concern that not many of these products have actually been promoted. They might have been launched, but I'm not sure they're actually out there being promoted and used. So I wanted to do some user testing, couldn't find many users. So that was my problem in trying to think about how can I user test. I could sort of wander around Welford Road Cemetery for hours on end, but I was never going to find somebody using the app. So that was a bit of an issue that, again, I think needs looking forward into. So that leads us into product usage. Sustainability, there was some very interesting sustainability built into, I think, the apps in particular. Because what they did with the apps, what the university partners did with the apps, was they wrote it in such a way that they were able to leave the community partner with a product that they could enhance and continue to put content into. And so the university partners in both cases, and they have done this, can add more people, they can add more information, they can add more stories. And I think that's a really valuable thing. So it's not static, it's continuous, and they can continue to build on that. The research outcomes, as well, I mean, particularly also this is for the university partners, they felt that the projects were very, very strong in terms of creative output. There's been public engagement, there's been numerous opportunities to present at conference, but the challenges for them are in terms of producing our more traditional research outputs in terms of academic papers, publications, etc. And there is a hope that that will come in the future, perhaps through later evaluation, etc. So the last one I think is very interesting, ambitions and new horizons. And it's certainly from the things I was reading, the things people were telling me, was the heritage groups do feel very excited about digital technology. So the good news is they've not been turned off by it. They've actually thought, yes, this is something we want to use. I'm not certain they always know how they're going to use it, but they do want to use it, and I think that's a positive thing. But they think they're thinking bigger, so they've got bigger horizons than they had before, and I think that's very useful. So I guess I have a few recommendations that, and there are more. The thing is, I feel I've done half an evaluation. I want to go back and particularly talk to some of those people that were difficult to find and talk to. But certainly, the amount of time, or the scoping, or what we can achieve in 1 month of a project was a real challenge for these partners in this particular collaborative way of working as well. Testing and evaluation, I would like to have seen that as part of the strategic planning at the beginning. Yes, and how are you going to evaluate it? Let's build that in at the beginning. Let's actually give some money towards it. Let's give a little bit of time and resource towards it as well. There does need to be greater management of the heritage partner expectations, but I think this is down to the scoping at the beginning. And yeah, there's lots of things we can say about that really. I do think, in my personal opinion, is I actually think that the heritage groups may need some more help with the production or the usage and the promotion, and how they can actually get these things into everyday use within their centres as well. And, well, I've spoken about the method and the allocation of the funding. So legacy, and I'll put a question mark because actually I think we had some really interesting descriptions of legacy at the beginning, and I think legacy is a really big question to look at, and I think I've only just begun to get underneath the skin of this. But certainly, I don't know whether now it's a legacy or an impact having listened to Corinne this morning, but certainly there were opportunities on both sides to do new and different things and to learn new skills. For the heritage groups in particular, and also for the university, they found that this has given them more access. Certainly, I think it's raised the profile of the universities in certain cases. There's been press coverage, there's been all sorts of things. But it has given the community groups more exposure to technology, more ideas that they can do. There has certainly been new relationships developed. One of the things I found very interesting talking to one of the community groups, they'd already got an excellent and brilliant relationship with Leicester Uni, and they really wanted to go out and develop a relationship with De Montfort, and this gave them an opportunity to do that, so I thought that was very interesting. Oh, the hidden extras, which I forgot to tell you about, sorry. The added bits, the extra bits that we created from the assets, and this proved to be really popular with quite a few of them actually. So they get all their content to create their app, and then they think, yeah, what we need is some paper leaflets. So they go out and then they create lots of paper leaflets as well. And so they've got lots of added content created in different ways, and they are also using that, which they didn't expect to do. So quite a lot of the heritage partners are walking around with books that they didn't expect to create, and leaflets and pamphlets that they didn't expect to create. So there's some added stuff there, which is very interesting. I think the building the confidence I spoke about, the credibility that the heritage partners feel, and the visibility that they feel, I think is really splendid. And this quote is just lovely. It came off of one of the surveys, and it's very positive, so it's a great way to end the afternoon. Well, not a way to end, but a great way to end this bit, I think. We simply could not have achieved what we did without the collaboration of the university. The value is priceless, and we believe the full benefits are yet to be revealed and valued. And I certainly think that's how I feel. We're nowhere near finding out the value of all of this yet. So that's it.